Today, my group and I will be presenting our wind and bioenergy assessment for our selected site at 1528 South King Street in Windsor, North Carolina. Here's our agenda for today. When looking at our goal is to offset 100% of the total annual energy consumption using renewable energy systems. The total demand is approximately 43,700 kilowatt hours per year. Out of this, about 62.5% comes from transportation, which is around 27,300 kilowatt hours annually. And the remaining 37.5%, or about 16,400 kilowatt hours, comes from residential electricity use. This breakdown is important because it guides how we design our system to meet both electricity and fuel needs. Now, when looking at our selected site, this first map shows us the annual average wind speeds in North Carolina with a red box indicating where our site is located. The selected site is located at 1528 South King Street in Windsor, North Carolina, in Bertie County. The property is about 59.65 acres, consisting of roughly 20 acres of farmland and 40 acres of wooded land. We use GIS maps, satellite imagery, and aerial views to better understand the site. These tools show us how the land has changed over time and help confirm property boundaries as well as suitability for renewable energy development. Here we have a satellite view from Google Earth of our property, which our tract is in the very middle of our screen. Next, we can see the property lines and how they have changed from 1998 through 2024 by utilizing GIS. The aerial and satellite views provide additional context for site selection. They help us evaluate land use, surrounding features, and overall layout. This information is useful for determining where different parts of the system could be placed efficiently. Finally, we have one more aerial view of our site. Looking at our justification, this property is well suited for a renewable energy system because of its mix of open farmland and wooded areas. The 20 acres of flat farmland can be used for system components, while the wooded land provides flexibility for future development. The site is also adjacent to a salt subdivision and a pond, which adds potential advantages for placement and expansion. Another key advantage is room for growth. Windsor is a small town with a population of around 4,000 people, which creates the potential to expand this project into a community scale renewable energy system.
Hi, my name is Dave Taylor, and I will be going over our hybrid system overview and our wind resource analysis for our project. Starting with the hybrid system, the design combines small wind turbines and bioenergy to meet our total energy demand. On the wind side, we're using four 10 kilowatt turbines, each of them being placed at the southwest edge of our property. These turbines were specifically chosen because they have low cut-in speed, which is important for this area since it only has moderate wind speeds. For our bioenergy portion, the system uses corn and miscanthus as our feedstocks. Corn is used for ethanol production, which will offset the transportation energy, while miscanthus is used in a pellet boiler for supplemental heat and power. Moving into the wind resource data, we first looked at the NREL wind maps, which show wind speeds of about 3 to about 3.9 meters per second at the lower heights. That's not very strong, but it is still perfectly usable for our smaller wind system. We also compared this regional weather data, which showed average wind speeds of around 7.4 miles per hour annually, with higher speeds during the peak months. But one issue here is that the data isn't super precise for our exact site, so it's a little rough. So to get a better understanding, we looked at wind speeds at higher elevations, specifically around 100 meters. The speeds would increase to about 6 to about 7.5 meters per second, which shows how important turbine height is. We also analyzed wind rose data from our nearby locations, like Plymouth and Washington, North Carolina. This showed that wind mainly comes from the southwest, which helps us decide where to place the turbines for maximum efficiency. Finally, we used data from the Global Wind Atlas to help model our wind speed changes.
To turn all this information into a useful tool, we utilize the Global Wind Atlas to extract specific mean wind speeds at 5 distinct elevations. While the Global Wind Atlas provides these discrete data points for a 3.5 square mile region, effective turbine placement requires a continuous model to estimate wind speeds at any potential hub height. To develop this model, we performed a regression analysis on the localized data. By fitting a power law curve to the wind speed versus height results, we derived the relationship shown here. In this equation, y represents the wind speed in miles per hour, and x represents the height from the surface in feet. The r-squared value, being 0.9871, indicates that 98.71% of the variance in wind speed is directly correlated with the distance from the surface, confirming that this is a mathematically reliable model for this specific region. As shown in the lower diagram, this profile mirrors the standard atmospheric boundary layer behavior we observe in fluid mechanics. The velocity increases as we move away from the surface and escape the effects of ground-level friction and obstacles. By establishing this curve, we can now accurately project energy yields for various turbine specifications within the Windsor area. Since we already knew our energy demand, and we derived a function to determine wind speed based on turbine height, we were able to use the Small Wind Certification Council's list of certified turbines and choose one according to capacity and cut-in speed. From there, we could estimate energy production and scale it to meet our requirements. The turbine we chose is the Berge Excel 10. Here are Berge's sales brochures for the Excel 10 wind turbine. We looked at many of these when doing the technical drill down from the SWCC site, and ultimately found that the specifications suited the installation best. Along with sales brochures, Berge's website provides installation instructions, which come with a variety of different tower types. We found that the Berge 10 could be installed on as high as a 160-foot guide lattice tower. Since wind speed increases with height, we set our hub height at the maximum tower height, which we calculated to provide 8.2 miles per hour average wind speed in this area. From here, we have two methods to estimate the annual production of one Berge turbine. Either apply the capacity factor to the nameplate capacity, or estimate using the annual energy production curve. Using Global Wind Atlas, we found capacity factors for IEC classes 1 through 3 to be 0.18, 0.2, and 0.25 respectively. If we applied these capacity factors to the rated power times 24 hours in a day times 365 days in a year, we have these estimated annual productions. We know that we're above the cut-in speed, but we're much lower than rated conditions, so let's try using the annual energy production curve. It turns out we were right to be skeptical of applying the capacity factor to the nameplate capacity of the turbine. Utilizing the derived mean wind speed of 8.2 miles per hour at 160-foot hub height, the Berge 10 annual energy production curve projects a yield of around 5,000 kilowatt hours per year. Knowing that our residential energy demand is around 16,500 kilowatt hours per year, and we estimate production to be 5,245 kilowatt hours a year, we'll need 4 turbines. This excess production yields 4,480 kilowatts per year, and our estimate aligns with the manufacturer's brochure, which claims 4,910 kilowatt hours per year at 8 mile per hour wind speeds. Based on multiple windrows charts from around the area, the wind blows predominantly from the southwest direction. One great thing about this site is that the line of trees is thin, and there's a pond situated to the southwest property line. If we install our 4 Berge 10 turbines here, we'll take advantage of the reduced turbulent flow over the pond surface and potentially see higher wind speeds than estimated. Now we're going to move into the bioenergy component of our hybrid system. We have 2 primary targets for the bioenergy component of our system. One is to offset 27,300 kilowatt hours per year of transportation energy, and the other is to supplement our other energy production. To do this, we'll use 2 different feedstocks, miscanthus for combustion and corn for ethanol production. 1 acre of miscanthus provides 15 dry tons per year. This can be used with either a gasifier or pellet boiler. Our intention is for this to supplement residential demand and open the potential for combined heat and power applications. The other feedstock, corn, will utilize 10 acres of farmland to produce 4,950 gallons of ethanol. This meets 100% of the transportation demand and allows the sale of remaining fuel and byproducts of production to local farms. You may have noticed our initial proposal only uses 13.5 of the 20 available farmland acres. The remaining farmland can be contracted to local farmers or planted for cash crops. Think things like soybeans, corn, cotton, and tobacco. This still leaves 40 wooded acres remaining untouched for biodiversity, recreation, and building a new home. The remaining plots of land can be subdivided and sold if you feel like it's an excess amount. To implement this plan effectively, there are some processing requirements. First, we'll need a small-scale distillation unit to convert corn grain into fuel. We'll need a pellet press to process the miscanthus into usable fuel for a biomass boiler, which can be used for supplemental residential heat and power. We're avoiding gasification because it could add complexity and cost to the system. And to take advantage of some incentives, we'll need to transition from residential use only to small-scale business applications.
Looking at costs, our cost breakdown consists of land, the new home, 4 wind turbines, the biomass pellet boiler, ethanol distillery, and the 2 flex fuel conversion kits for both vehicles. Looking at the cost summary, relocation-wise, we're investing $619,000 into land and building a house. And we are investing for renewables $455,000 for the renewable energy hybrid systems. This equates to over $1 million US. For our final cost assessment, our old energy cost was $6,970 a year, with a payback period of 32.5 years using only savings. By selling excess ethanol, we would make $14,423 in profit. And by selling the excess electricity to the grid, we'd be making about $670, with a total profit of $15,093, with plenty of room to grow. Now looking at incentives, some applicable incentives are the Inflation Reduction Act, which allows for up to $1 per gallon tax credit for low carbon fuel produced and sold. The Rural Energy for America incentive, that would cover 50% of total project costs by grants, as well as USDA loans being offered. Lastly, net metering would allow us to sell excess wind electricity back to utility at a retail rate. Looking at these incentives implied in regards to the 4 wind turbines, the ethanol distillery, the pellet boiler and mill, and the total system altogether, we have 50% savings on capital costs, minimum annual operating expenses, and also take note that on this data, profits from selling excess ethanol is included in here. One missed opportunity is the Inflation Reduction Act, which would have provided 30% uncapped tax credit on purchase and installation of wind turbines, battery storage, and biomass boilers, but unfortunately it was terminated at the end of 2025. In conclusion, some limitations include the unknown equipment cost and market volatility that makes capital costs harder to predict. The agricultural operating costs were not considered in this project. The project assignment was not constrained by a budget, and the payback period is likely to be the best case scenario, as the ethanol system may break even or even lose money in worse years. Our net zero goal was accomplished. Although initial investment is high, transitioning to make profit from the land is very beneficial, as we produced substantially more energy than what was being used. And incentives significantly shortened this payback, as we have $6,970 in savings per year, plus $19,575 in profit and incentives, which brings the payback period back to 11.6 years.